You're listening to the Dwell on These Things podcast. I'm John Stange, and it's great to have you with us today, as always. And today we have a bonus episode where we're going to be talking to two of my friends, Angie and Alan Thomas. They are with us today from the Jacksonville, Florida area, and they have a very interesting story, very interesting testimony, something that very much connects to their faith, but also to their health. One of the things that I think most of us probably, almost regardless of whatever season of life we're at, most of us in our culture recognize that we could probably afford to lose a few pounds. And Alan and Angie have a really cool story about how the Lord helped them on that journey, but also how they're helping people today with that journey. We have some lots of good common friends as well. Maybe you recognize the name Dan Miller. Dan was somebody that was a common friend to both of us and just an author who has influenced both of us as well. But anyway, all that being said, I just want to welcome Alan and Angie Thomas to the Dwell on These Things podcast. Welcome, guys. So glad to have you with us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. Great to be here, John.
Well, fill in anything I missed from that introduction, and then please tell us your story because it's pretty amazing, and I'd love for people to have the opportunity to hear it.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. And it started with in 2017. After it was the day after Angie and I had been married for we'd celebrated our 31st wedding anniversary, and we have four amazing children who all of them were grown except one at home at 15 years old at that point. And I've been struggling with my weight for a lot of years, like a lot of people. I'd been on probably somewhere north. We've added it up somewhere north of 70 different diet and weight loss programs. Spent tens of thousands of dollars and really never got the long term result for us. And I stepped up on the scale that morning, something I didn't really like to do very much in those days. And I stood on the scale and I looked down and I saw the number 3 at the beginning. I saw 304 on that scale, 304.00. And standing there, it was almost like I was in the dark. Angie was in the other, it's still in bed. It was probably 6 o'clock in the morning. I was, likely, I don't remember specifically, devotional time, that kind of thing, just quiet time. But standing there, I started to think, at the time I was working in management in the life insurance industry where we dealt with the senior market. That's people 65 and older predominantly. And I'd been in thousands of homes, literally training agents and being an agent myself. And I thought, just for some reason, got opened my eyes to the fact that I'd never met a man that was 65. Now, I was only 55 at the time, but I'd never met a man 65 years old that was more than 100 pounds overweight. Now, we call those unicorns. They're out there. I mean, there are some out there, but I had never met one in the thousands of homes I've been in. And immediately my thought was, well, my wife was probably going to be married to some other guy, not because she was shopping around for another man, because I couldn't put down the fork and couldn't put down the spoon. And so standing there in the midst of that just eye-opening, it was really, if it had been 299.9, John, nothing would have happened. Okay. But it was a tipping point moment. That 304 just got my attention in a way it never before. And I reached for my cell phone for some reason. To this day, I don't know why, other than maybe just prompting from God. And I took a picture of that scale. And on our website, that 304 is the morning. That was that morning. That's the real picture. And I said, I'm never going to see that again. And I began to do what I always did, started cutting back. You don't, how to lose weight is not really that complicated. While it's not easy, it's not complicated as, really. I knew exactly what to do. In fact, I always thought I knew so much about it. I've been on so many diets and exercise plans. I could write a book about weight loss, even though I'd never been successful at it. And I just started dropping weight. But I had, Angie and I had enrolled 2 weeks later, from that, it was March 15th. And in a challenge that Nick Unsworth, you might know who Nick Unsworth, Life on Fire is, but Nick Unsworth is Life on Fire Challenge. And I didn't know I got a free coaching call for like 5 mornings in a row that was 10 minutes. And this gentleman, he was actually a pastor he was a part-time coach and a pastor in San Diego. His name is Asian descent. It was Yo Kim. And third day in, Yo Kim, and this was about our business. It was not about my weight. It was not about any of those things. It was about our business, how to grow our insurance business more. That's why I did this, invested this money in this challenge that we were part of and this coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And Yo Kim asked me, now we were on the phone. We didn't, back then Zoom wasn't as much a thing in 2017. And he says, well, what do you think's holding you back in your business? And I said, well, that's easy. It's my weight. And he said, really? And he said, how much do you weigh? And I said, well, the other day I weighed 304. I'm about 298 and change right now, but I've never been able to keep it off long term. And he says, well, do you know what to do? I said, of course I know what to do. Everybody knows what to do. And he says, well, why don't you do it? And I said, I just can't seem to stick to it. And he said, well, and I'm a verbal processor. Angie's a great listener. We've been together, married 38 years now, but together 44. We met at the University of South Carolina. So Yo Kim let me process. And what I did, he said, well, how could you stick to it? And I said, well, gosh, if I could be like on one of those shows like Biggest Loser, where everybody from my church, everybody from my high school, junior high, people in our neighborhood, everybody saw that way. There's no way I wouldn't drop the pounds. And he says, well, you're unlikely to get cast on Biggest Loser. He said, is there any other way? Can you think of a way to do it? And I said, and this is where the verbal processing came in. I said, I guess I could post my scale on Facebook. And immediately when the words came out, I was like, I wanted to take them back. I guess I could post my scale every day and do it. He immediately, Yo Kim jumped on it. He said, do it now. I said, could I wait till I'm 289.9? Or something like that was a big difference. I mean, that's still, by the way, that's still morbid obesity at 5'11". And so, but for me, it was just, but he said to me something that was really prophetic. He said, Alan, you're the tipping point. There's something going on here that I don't quite understand. He said, but this is really important. You need to do this right now. Boy, there's no more prophetic words have ever been spoken to me. And so I did. I posted that and I said I'm gonna weigh 175 pounds on November the 20. Let me see. November 22nd. I'm going from memory. November 22nd this year, which was not that far away because it was March 15th. And immediately I started getting people following. Now the next thing that happened was, and Angie may want to tell this part.
Well, we typically talk about things. So as Z might have said, I was shocked and appalled at a lot of other things that went through my brain when I realized he had.
She was really
yes, correct. But as you said, in 190 or whatever days, 260 days, I would be thrilled. And
yeah,
that was true because I was worried about my husband's health. I mean, I loved him at any weight, but I was worried. But back to me for a moment. I knew one of the fears was that I was carrying extra weight. With the first 3 children, I lost the weight pretty quickly, pretty easily. But with the fourth one, life was busier. We were homeschooling, we were this, we were that, and I just didn't get off all of the weight. And then we did this fantastic thing called we relocated to Florida, where we were going to lose the last 20 pounds and say 50 pounds that we had gained. But instead, we're at a new location, new home, and all of these great restaurants and all the neighbors, oh, you got to try this place and this place, and the kids are getting active and we're meeting people. So even though we're out walking and doing things, we were gaining. We weren't going the right direction.
We came to Florida, what she's trying to say, to eat it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, pretty much.
We went up eating Florida, but anyway, I jumped on board also because I knew I needed to for our family and for Alan, and it was important for all of us.
Yeah, so. and it was, and that was the thing. I mean, so it was scary what we did, and by the way, we don't have our clients do this. The social media has changed quite a bit in the last 7 years, so we don't. I don't recommend what we did, but at the end of the day, something pretty magical happened, and it was like immediately the changes started to take place. And I knew it was going to work, and people were encouraging. We got this kind of identity that we could do something, and while we'd had success in a lot of areas of our life, this one area had just beat us. I mean, it beat me,
Mhm.
and I as the leader of the home, Angie was going along with me if I was having ice cream sundae. I'd have two, she'd have one, and so she had her weight loss story as well. But at the end of the day, it was holding us back from so much more,
Hmm.
and it was pretty amazing as it happened. We only had one negative comment, and at the time I had like 200 Facebook friends, and it grew to close to 5,000, I think, somewhere around there. And we
Hmm.
had people from around the world following it, and it was really humbling. But it was empowering too. And I only had one negative comment the whole time. Most people say, "Oh, great job," whatever, whether it was up or down or whatever, because I posted it every day. And I wrote about this story, and I didn't write about whether we ate broccoli or whether, because none of that really matters. I mean, do you have to change what you eat? Of course you do, John. You have to do some exercise. Well, that sure helps. I mean, it does. But at the end of the day, it was always the thinking. And I wasn't doing this to build to change the trajectory of obesity. I was just doing it because I was so overweight, and I knew that at 304 was this tipping point, but I knew if I didn't do something about it, it would be 400 and could be
Mhm.
500, because I knew, and I could write a thesis on how to do that too.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, as we did that, this one person, he was somebody I didn't know personally. He's a friend of a friend of a friend, and he looked at my numbers obviously, and he said, "There's no way you make it by that day." And I don't, and I'm sort of what Abraham Lincoln would have said about posting arguments on Facebook is, I'd rather be thought a fool than post and remove all doubt. So
Yeah,
so
right.
I don't argue with people on social media. I never do. But I came up with these two words that hit me, and it's become a mantra of our clients. And it was, "Watch me." And
Mhm.
so he was right. I did not hit it on November 22nd. Just like he said, I hit it on November 17th. I hit it 5 days early.
Nice.
And, and it was, and I don't say that to boast. I say it to impress upon people. If you're somebody that struggles, there's a way out. It's not, is it easy? No, it's not. Do you have to do what we did? No, of course not. But at the end of the day, it's within people's reach, and it's like our life came alive. I mean, it wasn't just because weight is health. Listen, if health were the most important factor for all of us around our weight, we'd all be wearing our skinny jeans right now.
Mhm.
We all know intellectually that we're going to be healthier. We know these things. We know all this, but it's never enough. But when people start to realize, and this was us, I realized what it was costing, and we can talk more about this in a minute. And it just, you get so much leverage. So anyway, you asked for if I need to add anything. I didn't mean to add 4 hours of commentary there. Sorry about
No, that was
that.
great. I didn't want to interrupt you because I think your story is inspiring, and obviously this was something you wrestled with for decades. Both of you
Yeah.
did. This is something that was an ongoing thing, and I'm sure that there are many people who are listening to us right now that can say, "Yeah, this isn't just a recent thing. This is an ongoing thing. For many decades, I've wrestled with this." I'm sure there are people that are listening to us right now that get frustrated every time they're in a picture because when they have to see themselves in a picture, they look at that and they think, "All right, I'm not really happy with how I look." Or they'll see a picture of themselves from several years ago that didn't stand out to them at the time, but now they look at it and they think, "Wow, I didn't realize it, but I like how I look then, and I'm not really liking how I look now." One of the things I'm curious about, you went on this journey, and do the math for us. What was the total amount you guys lost on that 260-day journey? What was the total amount?
100 together, 192 pounds, 129 for me and
192 pounds together. And I think that's beautiful that you were able to do this together because you had the in-house accountability. And I know
yeah.
for me, you talked about social media also providing an added rung of public accountability, but
Sure.
having a teammate right there, the two of you each using each other as a teammate to encourage each other along the way. I think that's a wonderful thing. And now one of the things that's kind of special about your journey is that I'm sure when you were doing this, you didn't anticipate helping anybody but yourselves. But now this has turned into one of those things where everybody you know that has watched your journey take place starts asking you, "Hey, how did you guys do this?" They see both of you succeeding in this. And so you fast forward a few years, and all of a sudden, a big part of your life has now become helping other people. So I wonder, could you just touch on that for a second? How do you actually help other men and women lose weight specifically without giving them a diet or exercise plan? Because that's the thing everybody expects. And when you and I were chatting about this, one of the things that you also said was the fact that it's not about a diet or exercise plan, that you're focused on this differently. So how do you actually help people succeed without following, I guess, in a sense, like the typical approach that people would expect?
No, it's a great question, and we get it a lot. Obviously, we get it a lot. But first, I'll give you. A lot of people don't know this history of it, and I'll give you a little bit of history on how that came about. This is prior to us doing any formal coaching or anything. When you lose a lot of weight, like you said, everybody asks you, "How'd you do it? How'd you do it?" And what they're really asking, John, they're asking, "How do I get to the land of eat as much as you want, whenever you want, whatever you want, with no pain, and I'll get all the weight
Mhm.
off?" That's what they're really asking. They want magic. Okay. But people used to ask me, and we ate super healthy. It was nothing crazy. We ate all the time. It was just the right stuff. And so what led us to not give a diet or exercise plan with it was we got a call from a friend in North Carolina who was in the insurance world, spouse of somebody, a colleague of mine, and said, "Hey, we've got a friend who has more than 100 pounds, who's a lady. Would you mind talking to her?" And so Angie and I were, we said, "Yeah, we'll be glad to talk to her." And I told her what we, began to tell her what we ate, like, which is the typical answer you give, tell her what we ate. And she was in the cosmetology business, so she knew a lot of things about cosmetology. But I didn't know, and I don't believe this is true, but I didn't know that she was a microbiologist also, because immediately when I told her what we did nutritionally, which was very sound, very approved by doctors, all this kind of thing. My doctor loved it and all that. She started picking holes in it, intellectually, about this and that. So she became a microbiologist immediately.
Hmm.
And so I don't argue with people. I'm like, okay, you do you, boo, is kind of my thought. And so, but it hit me at that moment. I said, "I'm curious." I said, "I appreciate that. That's fine. I'm not having nothing to gain by you eating what I eat. I was just trying to help you." So I said, "But what'd you have for lunch?" And she said, "Oh, I went to Taco Bell." I said, "Oh, I love Taco Bell. They're awesome." I said, "Got the cheesy stuff and the chimichangas and the tacos, which, probably not on the list of top 10 healthiest places to eat in America, but I'm sure not beating on Taco Bell." But she told me that. Now she was beating up the nutrition that we told her about, but Taco Bell she ate. Okay, and this is typically what I did. I did the same thing too, John. Okay, exact same thing, hundreds
Mhm.
of times. And so my next question for her was the obvious one: "What'd you have for dessert?" And she said, "Well, I had Kit Kats." I said, "Oh, I love Kit Kats, chocolate with the cookie center and everything. Had many, many, many times." "So what about the drink?" "Mountain Dew." I said, "Awesome." All that is probably not how you're going to lose weight, just for the record, and not nutritionally sound, for the record. But at the end of the day, I looked at Angie immediately and I said, "Hey, God bless you. I hope everything works out for you." And I told Angie, I said, "I will never tell another soul what to eat." Okay. Fast forward a few months, and Dan Miller, who you were talking about earlier, was telling me, "Man, you need to teach this to people. You need to coach this."
Mhm.
And I said, "I don't want to tell anybody what to eat." And Dan won't argue with people either. If he's ever been a mentor of anybody who's listening,
Yes, and
he's
he's been on this show as well.
he just lets you do and kind of thing,
Mhm.
figure it out. And so he didn't argue with me, and a few weeks went by, and we were actually on a live call, in his community, and it was about coaching and about how we've been impacted by coaching, and somehow our weight loss story had come up. And an individual heard our weight loss story and messaged me immediately on Facebook Messenger and said, "Would you mind talking to me after this?" And I said, "Okay." And this individual I got on the phone with just, didn't know what it was about. And he said, "Man, I need help," and really sincerely asked me to help him. And I heard something I hadn't heard before. I heard myself.
Mm.
I heard myself. And I said, "Okay." And I really was kind of begrudgingly doing it, not to harm him, just because I just felt this inner conflict about it. And it was maybe that, am I good enough to? I was just a failure. That was my qualification. I was a failure at it. And so I said, we'll do 3 sessions. I said, and I said it for the first time, and we said it to every client since. We're never going to tell you what to eat. I'm never going to tell you what exercise to do. And it led to this individual changing his life. It led to it, and it forced us to kind of go back through and say, what do we do here? What do we do here that didn't inquire? Because this is what and you ask how we get this without a diet or exercise plan. Now, do people have to change what they eat? Of course they do. In fact, we have people get radically responsible and become an expert on everything they eat and every movement they do, so that they become the expert and they don't need an outside force to control it. But I ask people, number one, most people will not admit what their ideal weight is because they're afraid to. Okay, I was that way for a long time. And what I asked people, I said, if Jesus walked in the door of your home with the version of yourself that you were created to be at your present age, what does that version weigh? Everybody knows what that number is. Now, does he love us at 100 pounds underweight, ideal weight, 500 pounds? Of course, he doesn't look at man the way men look at men, but we were created for something greater. So we're not going to, if I'm 300 pounds, that's going to hamper my ministry. It's going to hamper my mission. It's going to hamper my family, all of those things, not to mention my health. But if I ask people that, they immediately know that answer. The next question, when they say, and we literally did this with a new client a couple of days ago who had a bunch of story about this stuff, and it was really neat. She's an amazing lady who's going to do awesome in our process. But my next question is, who do you love most on earth? People that you love, and this is generally family, maybe a pet. Pets come up very often in this conversation. I said, okay, imagine that they were taken hostage. And these awful, God forbid this happened, but imagine they were taken hostage and you get a call, and the only way to get them back alive is for you to, what we call release, but most people refer to as lose 1 pound a week, which certainly is very safe. That's a safe number, 1 pound a week, until you reach that God created weight at your present age. Now, here's the catch. You can't ask a doctor, nutritionist, dietitian, physical fitness expert, or you can't even consult Google or search engine to know what to eat. But you've got to eat in such a fashion, and if you're healthy enough to exercise, some people are not. If you're healthy enough to exercise, you've got to do what your doctor and any professional would say. You're doing amazing. Could you save those people's lives? Every time they know the answer. And I say, what would you do? And they'll walk me through it, and they'll tell the truth. And my next question is generally a statement. I said, well, God doesn't make any garbage, and he didn't start with you either. So what's been stopping you from doing that for yourself? So when people get radically responsible for what they're eating, then because it's like we have clients that, one of our clients who just crossed the 170 pound weight loss. He's an individual that cannot walk without a walker because of fused vertebrae. He's over 70. He was one of those unicorns. He came to us at 388 pounds, was his highest weight. So exercise off the table. He struggled for 52 years. And when it became his responsibility, it got real. And when he followed that process, it worked. It works every time. It does. Is it easy? No, it's not. But people already know what to eat. We want people to get educated. Absolutely. But at the end of the day, if somebody told me at 304 pounds, you need to eat this, this, and this to get your ideal weight, I would immediately do like that cosmetologist. I'd become a microbiologist and tell them why it would never work for me, because I was looking for a way out. I always wanted to find a way out of that diet or exercise plan so that I could sit around and eat another bowl of chocolate Moose Tracks ice cream or something like that, and nothing. And hey, and just to be clear, I believe Jesus created all the food good. He just didn't say eat it all at once. But at the end, of the day, when people become responsible in that level, like you would with your money, like you would with your relationships, like you would with your career, when you treat it like that, then all of a sudden the nutrition and the exercises become easy. Simple. Easy is not the relative term here, but they become simple. But people ask us all the time, how are you able to get people to lose this kind of weight without giving them the diet? I said, we teach them the most important thing of all, how not to quit.
That's fantastic. Especially because in line with what I see in the local church, I've been serving in pastoral ministry. This is year 27.
Oh, wow.
I see in the context of the local church various evidences of the fact that just the obesity epidemic, it definitely impacts followers of Christ. It definitely impacts the church as a whole. What are you seeing as far as the impact? I'll even mention this too. Tomorrow I'm going to be visiting an area that's not too far from where I live. It's less than 3 hours away, but it's an area that is known for just bad health and lots of obesity and things like that. I don't know why it's part of the cultural area, but it absolutely is. It's just part of the way it is. But I think of it primarily through how obesity impacts the culture of the church and followers of Christ and the church as a whole. So what do you think? How do you suppose obesity is impacting us as believers on a grand scale?
Well, number one, it's this belief that I can do it tomorrow. It's this belief. I think it's the greatest lie of the enemy, and it really is the greatest lie. I mean, he comes to kill, steal, and destroy, and Jesus said he came to give us life abundantly. And what we do, we believe we're kind of like Wimpy from Popeye. If you were old enough to remember Popeye the Sailor Man,
Of course.
the cartoon, Popeye's good buddy Wimpy said he would gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today. And so what we believe is we will take that weight off next week is what we do, kind of like Wimpy was going to pay for it later. And we look at and I've said this many times to many pastors that in most conservative Christian circles, if you're in leadership and you walk into a church event and you have alcohol in your breath, you will be immediately put in some sort of 12-step program, some sort of intervention will be done, not drunk. This person's not drunk, but I'm saying they would be that, and probably pulled from leadership temporarily or permanently. Okay, and I get that at some level. I do. I mean, I can understand that. But if you're in leadership in a conservative church, okay,
Hmm.
Bible believing church, and you're 100 pounds overweight as a leader, whether you're a deacon, whether you're in some sort of teacher or some level of leadership, and if the church has a function and fried chicken is God's food. I mean, I think most churches have some kind of fried chicken dinner. You have 3 plates of fried chicken, biscuits, gravy, mashed potatoes, corn, all those goodies. You have 3 plates of that. The only question you'll get asked in that church, you're 100 pounds overweight already. And the only question that church leadership will ask you is what you'd like for dessert. That's hypocrisy. It is. I mean, it is. And so how's it impacting us? It's impacting the people that are coming in. See, the beauty, the real beauty of obesity and overweight is that it cannot be hidden. You couldn't hide when I was 304 pounds. I mean, for crying out loud, people probably thought I weighed 100 or 200 more than that when I look back at those pictures.
Hmm.
But what's interesting is the non-believer who comes in, it's evidence of lack of self-control. Now, I know people have struggles. I get that. People have struggles with metabolism, all sorts of different things. But at some level, everyone can lose weight. Okay,
Hmm.
it takes longer. The gentleman I mentioned, it's taken him 3 years to do 170 pounds. Actually, it took him 50. It's taken him 53 years
Yeah.
because the first 50 didn't count. Now he just hit Jimmy Carter weight, as we figured out. He was one of those unicorns. He was over 70 when he came to us. But the point I make is people see that and I think the non-believer honestly will question it. And not just that, it's not just that the non-believer may say, well, they're not showing self-control in this area. How can I trust them and what they're saying? That's some of that. And I know that this may hurt some people's feelings, but I say it out of love. I mean, it really is. But also the person who's carrying the extra 50 pounds, 100 pounds, whatever that is, that person will hold back too.
Hmm.
Because what will they think of me? Will they? And I've spoken to, I think of one conversation I had with a deacon of a church that was over 400 pounds. He was somebody that didn't come in our program. He was just investigating, and he told me a story of how he had replaced a deacon who had been drinking frequently in public, and literally in the intervention that they did, when he started to speak up, the deacon who had been drinking publicly who was being taken out of leadership, he looked at this gentleman and he says, "Let he who's without sin cast the first stone." And this gentleman knew exactly what that man was going to say. So even though he might have had a very wise thing to say, other people are not going to hear it sometimes. And the people who were saying it, that when I was 100 pounds overweight, my mind was always on, what are people going to think of me? I know this is an area of failure. So when we're kind of, the thing I loved about Peter was Peter got to walk on water with Christ. Okay. Not that he sank, but the reason he got to walk on water is he took both feet and got out of the boat. He was the only one that did it. And so we believe that we can walk on water in our faith by having one foot out of the boat. Being obese is having the foot in the boat. You can't have it both ways. Now, does that mean that you're a bad person? No. God loves you regardless of your size. I mean, that's clear in scripture. But at the end of the day, the enemy is coming to kill, steal, and destroy. He's taking away our impact. He's taking away our message. He's pulling it away. I know our friend Dan, who passed away, recently. He said to me one time that there was a gentleman sitting at a restaurant he and Joanne used to frequent in Franklin, and I think it was Miller's Ale House. They love the food there. And all. And he said there was a man, and Dan called me about this. He said there was a guy sitting at the bar eating, and he was eating up just a massive plate of food. And the guy was, 100, 200 pounds overweight probably. And Dan said, when did he couldn't help but think, when did that guy give up? And see, that was such a great question. And Dan meant it caringly. He didn't mean it in a
Sure.
judgmental way. You knew Dan. I mean, he would never, he wanted to improve people.
Oh, no, of course. Well, he also one of the big things people would ask him, in his 70s was, why do you keep working? Why do you keep doing what you're doing? Why do you stay motivated? Right.
Sure.
And so I imagine he thought that a lot, just wondering why some people stay motivated to do something and why some people give up. So as he looks at this man, he sees someone who made the choice to give up, whereas Dan in his 70s was saying, I'm not giving up.
Yeah, no, he was everything's. He always wanted to know, what does this make possible. That was his favorite. I know you knew his favorite thing, but at the end of the day, it is in the community. I want people to hear what I'm saying with some hope. The great news is that the obesity epidemic is rampant in the church. Now I'll say that again. The great news is it's rampant in the church. It cannot be hidden. That's fantastic news in my opinion. Now, here's why. Because when people take action and start to release that weight or lose that weight, as culture calls it, that can't be hidden either. And when the outside, those people who are hopeless in their life, maybe not because of obesity, maybe they've got a gambling addiction, maybe they've got a porn addiction, maybe their marriage is falling apart, maybe their finances are just awful, and they are hopeless. They see the man and the woman who are releasing weight, and all of a sudden they have hope that they may overcome their challenges too, and they say, hey, maybe these people might be different. I mean, Wayne Jacobson is in his book. He Loves Me. It's if you've ever read anything by Wayne Jacobson, it was either that or it might have been in Finding Church, but it was interesting. He tells a story of a man getting on a plane beside him and sat beside him when Wayne was coming from some sort of evangelical mission that he was on. And the man sat beside him. He was a very chatty guy, and he said, "What do you do?" He said, "Well, I'm in Christian ministry." And the man sitting beside me, he said, "Well, I'm an atheist." Real bubbly atheist. And Jacobs is sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, this is going to be a long flight. He's going to tell me how wrong I am for the rest of the flight. But immediately that man started talking about. He said, "You know what I think God says?" He says, I think there's a God in heaven that loves us." Now, this is the atheist talking.
Yeah.
Said, "I think there's a God in heaven that loves us more than we can know, and if we just act like it and treat each other like that, we'd all be better." And this is the atheist talking. So Wayne Jacobs immediately says, "Well, where'd you hear that?" So I don't know. It's just what I thought, just what I think. He said, "Well, that's pretty close to what Scripture says." He said, "May I ask why you don't believe it?" And he said, "Because I've never seen it lived." And so going from obese to an ideal weight is a way that we can live out our faith. I believe 100%.
Hmm.
I really do. And so what would it look like? What would the non-believer do if all of a sudden the people of God reached their ideal weight, started acting like they were different?
Hmm. It's a great question. I want to help those that are listening right now to feel some hope and
Yeah,
also recognize that there are some solutions that
sure.
they can utilize. And so part of my motivation in having you on here today was so that you could share a little bit about that because your ministry at this point now, Alan and Angie, they have a ministry called Rethink Dieting. And I want to give you just a moment here to just tell people what it is and what you offer. But why don't you do that here in our closing minutes? Tell people about Rethink Dieting and tell people about the solution to this problem that you guys have come up with and that you're helping people with.
Well, we just no, and thank you for that. And we just honestly we walk back to our own journey. I mean, that's really it. And we have a process called Rethink Dieting that they can actually go to transformmyfuture.com/dwell, DWELL, for like dwell on these things. So make it easy for people to find who listen to the podcast, and they can watch a training. That this is one of our free things that we offer. It's the 5-step strategy that Angie and I use to lose 192 pounds, and it works. And I would encourage people to watch that. But what it is, we walk people through a journey. Really, we do. We walk them through getting this thing that the biggest challenge when you're losing weight is belief that it's possible, belief that you can do it. And so because we get discouraged and we want to quit and go back to what was easy and what was comfortable. And so we help people get this crystal clear clarity that they've never had.
Mhm.
Okay. And so that when it's just like a client from a few years ago, the commercial airline pilot, he was so frustrated that his scale wasn't moving after dropping about 50 of his 90 pounds that he was releasing. And he traveled all over the world, had a little bit more challenge because he was eating airport food and restaurants
Mhm.
and all that. And he had followed our process, and I just walked him through in a very short text, well, what about this and this? And he said, oh my gosh, that's right. I forgot about that. But it gave him hope to not quit, because that is the biggest piece of the puzzle. It's kind of like raising children. I
Mhm.
mean, we've got 4 children, and we wanted to quit many times, many
Yeah.
times. And I remember Gary Ezzo, who taught, if you remember, Growing Kids God's Way. We were the remedial students in Growing Kids God's Way. We hosted it many times. I never say led it, because we hosted it. We were part of it. And I met Gary Ezzo, and I gave him a rant about one of our children who now is extremely successful. He's a godly man, married and all. But I just told him all the things that were challenges, and all he did was look at me and he said, Alan, it's going to be okay. And when he went to the next person beside me that was in his greeting line. And I
And
was
he
so,
was right.
and he was right. He was right. But it was so interesting. Recently, and that was decades ago that he told me that. And why this applies to weight loss is because he he knew something I didn't know. He knew from spending 30 seconds with us that we were not going to quit. And today, that young man, like I said, is a very successful young man, and he learned to apply the gift of arguing and saying no to the courtroom. So he's a trial attorney, and so
Nice.
but he's bent that way. But we teach people how to get that certainty so they don't go off the rails. We also teach them how to overcome wobbles. You're going to have wobbles. It
Mhm.
doesn't. They're not going to stop making your favorite food just because you and we also teach people to step into this power. One of the us doing this as a couple came out of, really, I believe, me accepting my responsibility as the leader of the house. I didn't do this uh, cognitively, but at looking back, hindsight is always 2020.
Mhm.
And I look back at the reason Angie had gained her weight was because she was just following me. That's what she was doing. And the
Mhm.
greatest way for me to help Angie lose her weight was just to lead
Mhm.
by example. And so we teach people how to lead. We teach people how to lead by example. We teach them the process of that, and we also teach them how not to go into shame about it.
Mhm.
Listen, this is not a shame game. This is an opportunity to lead in ways that you've never experienced probably. And I get God bumps when I think about this. I really do. I can't, to this day. I mean, we've been doing this a long time. We've helped a lot of people, but at the end of the day, we teach people how to go the distance in this. And may sound kind of woo woo. It's not, because I thoroughly believe that when Jesus said in John 10:10, I've come to give you life abundantly, he meant it. But we've been selling our birthright like Esau did, for a bowl of stew.
Mm.
And a lot of people say to us, John, they'll say, "Oh, God knows my number of days." I say, "Okay, I get that, but there's a thing called free will, and you get to make choices." And so you're telling me that the drug addict knows his days too? I mean, he sticks a needle in his arm and dies from that. There's some consequences to that. He knew God knew the days, but there was another choice too that the person could make. And we do this from a standpoint of thinking that it's okay. And when we learn that there's no shame in it, but there's also no more tolerance of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we focus on. And when people see it and see what happens, they get, I mean, I think about a client from a few years ago, Sean. Ironically, his family literally lives a mile from us on Amelia Island, Florida,
Mm-hmm.
north of Jacksonville. But we met him. Found us through Facebook. He was over 400 pounds overweight. He was in a wheelchair if he had to walk more than 10 feet. He'd never been on a diet in his life. I refused to tell him what to eat. And I said, and when he was the first client I ever asked that question of what would you eat in that scenario I gave earlier. And he says, "I got it, Alan. I could eat less." I said, "That's where you start."
Mm.
Now that led to him releasing over 150 pounds and changed his life. But what was interesting about this, and I asked every one of our clients to say, "Please tell us the things that or the God moments that happen because of your weight loss journey." That's what we live for. Tell us the things that are inexplainable. And I mean, I want you to be healthy. I want your blood pressure to come down. I want you to get off your meds. I want you to come out. And he came out of the wheelchair, walking 8-10 miles a day. So he's definitely out of the wheelchair.
Yeah.
But all of these things. And I said, "Tell those." And he called Angie and me one day from New York. And he works for a multinational company. And had been in operations for years. And he called and said, "Alan, I just wanted to let you know my CEO was talking about you and me from stage." I said, "I don't know your CEO." And he told me his name. I still don't know who. I've never spoken to this person in my life. He said, "Yeah, you told me to call you on one of those moments. They just gave me the International Sales Award out of 40 plus." I said, "That's amazing, Sean." I said, "That's so amazing, but I don't know when did you switch to the sales and marketing department of this particular company?" He said, "That's why I'm calling you. I'm in operations still. They've never given that." He said, but the CEO was talking about how his weight loss journey had brought in a client somehow. I mean, it's only God could make this. You can't make this stuff up. Had brought in this client that led to the biggest deal the company did that year. And so they gave it uncharacteristically to an operations man. And so I want people to see it's almost like it's kind of like what Dave Ramsey teaches, and I know you know his work and all.
Oh yeah.
And it's so simple. Money's simple, getting out of debt, and it's like things start to happen for you in other areas that have nothing to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like God's saying to us, John, Alan, Angie, and anybody listening, put whatever name in there. If you'll just do the simple things, if you'll be faithful to your wife, to your husband, if you'll do what you're supposed to do, tell the truth, follow what I'm saying with your weight, just be sensible. You don't have to go crazy. If you're doing crazy, you're doing it wrong. If you'll get these simple areas of your life in line, I'll open the floodgates for you. Because if he can't trust us to handle these vessels called bodies, how could he trust us with more?
Mm.
I mean, think about it. So
Right.
anyway, I hope that helps.
So definitely, yeah. So you would view it as a stewardship issue as well.
Oh, it's 100%. It is the greatest debt in society there is. People brag to me a lot of times at 150 pounds overweight that they're debt free, and I'm like, no, you're not. I mean, it's
still got one you got to clear up.
Well, statistically, it costs men 20 years of their life on average if they're in the obesity category. Women, it costs them less years. It's about 5 years and this is on average. But but we'd love to see the obesity epidemic tide turned and the people of God lead the charge. 92,055 people a day become obese more than there were yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's a staggering statistic. It's been wonderful to have you both on Dwell on These Things. Alan, Angie, so great to have you here. You mentioned this website before. I'll mention it again. Transformmyfuture.com/dwell. And you can stop over there, and Alan and Angie Thomas have some free training if this is something that would be beneficial to you. They also have services that they offer for those that are looking for just to work with them directly. And I'd encourage you to check that out. But two people that not just you're not just talking the talk, you're walking the walk, you're living examples of what you're teaching others to do. And I'm super grateful for your ministry helping people really get their health in a better spot so that they can ultimately be better stewards of what the Lord's entrusted to their care and live for his glory. So, Alan, Angie, thank you guys so much for being guests here on Dwell on These Things. Give us a final word of wisdom as we finish out.
I would say to everyone listening, just be hopeful. You know, it's and think about this one piece. If Jesus, like I said earlier, Jesus walked into your home today with the version of yourself he created you to be at your present age, that version of you has a weight. And I want to tell everybody listening to this that thinks it's not, that's afraid to even go there, that is 100% possible. So be
Love it.
encouraged that you get there.
Be encouraged. Excellent. Transformmyfuture.com/dwell. And you could receive that free training from Alan and Angie Thomas. Thanks again, guys.